It's just past 7:30 p.m. across India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'll be joined shortly by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Kate Fisher. But up first, let's take a look at the headlines. Kremlin says no country is immune to terrorism as it charges 4 suspects in Friday's deadly attack on a concert hall. France on high alert following the Moscow shootings. UN Chief Antonio Guterres calls for massive supply of aid to Gaza as the United Nations Security Council is set to vote on a resolution demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in the conflict. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says China represents epoch-defining challenge, adds UK will protect itself from increasingly assertive Beijing as Britain sets out to release Chinese cybersecurity data. And the vibrant festival of colours, Holi, is celebrated with splashes of colour and warm exchange of greetings across India and the world. A Russian court late on Sunday charged 4 men with acts of terrorism in connection with the March 22nd concert hall attack. As per the court statement, 2 of the 4 admitted to their guilt and they are to be held in pre-trial detention until May 22nd. At least 137 people were killed and more than 150 injured after 4 gunmen stormed the Crocus City Hall on Friday night, where an estimated 6,000 people were attending a rock concert. The attackers also set fire to the venue and caused the roof to collapse. Meanwhile, Moscow has said that no country is immune to the threat of terrorism. The Kremlin highlighted the importance of international cooperation to fight terrorism and said that it was complicated because of the most acute confrontational period. DD India's Dasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
Speaking to the reporters on Monday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said no city or country could be completely immune to the threat of terrorism. Peskov was asked if the Friday terrorist attack was a failure of the Russian intelligence services. Peskov said that the intelligence services work tirelessly. They are dealing with all sorts of challenges and threats that Russia is facing. He didn't provide more details on the course of the investigation, but noted that the fight against terrorism required full-fledged international cooperation. Yet he said Russian special services operate independently without any contacts with the Westerners. Late Sunday, 4 men originating from Tajikistan were charged with terrorism. At least 2 of them pleaded guilty. While in court, they all showed signs of beating. The Kremlin didn't comment on that, but noted that law enforcement agencies will now analyze the situation with the protection of facilities after this deadly terrorist attack. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has said that it would be cynical and counterproductive for Russia to blame Ukraine for the Moscow attack. Macron said that Islamic State's affiliate in Afghanistan, which is known as ISIS Khorasan or ISIS-K, which claimed responsibility for the Moscow attack, had also tried to commit these attacks in France. The French government on Sunday raised the country's terror alert warning to its highest level following the Friday shootings in Moscow.
We must refrain from all types of instrumentalizing. There is also a war of aggression that we have condemned, which we are, deeply opposed to, which has led us to take sanctions against Russia and to support Ukraine. I think that it would be both cynical and counterproductive for Russia itself and the security of its citizens to use this context to try and turn it against Ukraine.
Condolences continued to pour in as people on Monday laid flowers and toys at the concert venue west of Moscow, the site of the deadliest attack Russia has seen for 2 decades. Russia on Sunday lowered its national flag on top of the Kremlin to half-mast as the country mourns victims of Friday's terrorist attack in Moscow. The Red Square remained closed as Russian authorities shut down all access points to this iconic landmark in Moscow following the attack. In a recent spate of missile attacks on Ukraine, a 3-story building in central Kiev was badly damaged on Monday morning. Missile debris fell in 3 other districts of the city as a string of hypersonic missile explosions rang out across the Ukrainian capital. Officials said that at least 10 people were injured in the attack. Following the attack, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called on international allies to supply more air defenses. Meanwhile, Ukraine's energy minister on Monday said that the nation is keeping electricity imports high and not planning to export power. Last week, Russia had attacked Ukraine's power facility, which caused blackouts in many regions. As of Monday morning, 401 settlements were without power across Ukraine. India slammed Pakistan once again over its absurd remarks on Jammu and Kashmir. Speaking at the 148th session of the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly in Geneva, Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Harivansh, representing India, emphasized India's status as the largest democracy in the world, a model that many countries aspire to emulate. He critiqued Pakistan's track record on democracy. Addressing Pakistan's claims on Jammu and Kashmir directly, Harivansh reaffirmed that the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are integral parts of India. He highlighted the futility of rhetoric and propaganda in changing this undeniable fact.
I take the floor to reject the preposterous comments made by Pakistan against my country. Lectures by a country which has an abysmal track record of democracy is laughable, to say the least. It would have been better if Pakistan did not undermine the importance of a platform like IPU by such absurd allegations and false narratives. As regards the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, they have been and will always remain an integral and inalienable part of India. No amount of rhetoric and propaganda from anyone can override this fact. Instead, Pakistan would be well advised to stop its terror factories that continue to launch countless cross-border terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir while farcically claiming to champion the cause of human rights. IPU members are well aware that Pakistan has an established history of harboring, aiding and actively supporting terrorists.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Prime Minister of Singapore Lee Hsien Loong during his visit to Singapore on Monday. Dr. S. Jaishankar conveyed the personal greetings of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In a social media post on X, the External Affairs Minister of India said that he valued his perspectives on the current state of the world. Dr. S. Jaishankar also met other Singaporean leaders, including Finance Minister Lawrence Wong, Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan, Home Minister K. Shanmugam during his 3-day visit to Singapore. Dr. Jaishankar will embark on a visit to the Philippines and Malaysia ahead of this. Now, the UN Security Council is shortly set to vote on a resolution demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza during the Holi month of Ramadan. The resolution put forward by the 10 elected council members is backed by Russia and China, who vetoed a US-sponsored resolution on Friday that supported an immediate and sustained ceasefire. The 22-nation Arab group at the UN issued a statement on Friday appealing to all 15 council members to act with unity and urgency and vote for the resolution to halt the bloodshed, preserve human lives and avert further human suffering and destruction. Since the conflict broke out on October the 7th, the Security Council has adopted 2 resolutions on the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza, but none of these resolutions has been successful in calling out for a ceasefire. Now, as part of an annual Ramadan solidarity tour, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in Jordan on Monday. The UN chief said that there is a growing consensus in the international community for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. He also called for continued funding for the United Nations Refugee Agency, asserting that it is a ray of light for millions of people.
I see a growing consensus emerging international community to tell the Israelis that the ceasefire is needed. And I also see a growing consensus. I heard it in the US, I heard it from the European Union, not to mention, of course, the Muslim world, a growing consensus to tell clearly to the Israelis that any ground invasion of Rafah could mean a catastrophic humanitarian disaster.
In the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, the Israeli Defense Forces neutralized over 20 suspected Hamas terrorists, apprehended approximately 500 more and seized weapons at the Al-Shifa hospital in the last 24 hours. Israeli Defense Forces also facilitated the exit of hundreds of Gazans from the area and questioned dozens of suspects. Israeli Air Force conducted strikes on roughly 50 targets, including Al-Amal, in the western Khan Yunis area, aiming to dismantle terrorist infrastructure in the area.
Today is day 6 of the IDF's operation against Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Shifa Hospital. 170 terrorists were neutralized in or around the Shifa Hospital compound while firing at our forces. The IDF apprehended hundreds of terror suspects with confirmed ties to Hamas or Islamic Jihad, making this one of the most successful operations since the start of the war.
Now, DD India's Alex Cadia joins us live from Tel Aviv. Alex, as we are expecting the vote at the UNSC today, can we expect a vote, one voice on the resolution demanding a ceasefire?
Well, what we understand just in the last few moments is that the United States is likely not to veto this UN Security Council resolution, which would mean that in the next few minutes we may hear that for the first time the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire in this war. We've also heard a very clear warning, a threat from Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that if the United States does not veto the resolution for a ceasefire in the Security Council, he will cancel the Israeli delegation meant to depart to the United States this week to discuss Israel's military operation. That's according to senior Israeli officials saying that the United States were informed of this morning. Now, the Americans say that they will allow this resolution to pass, we understand from Israeli officials, and perhaps another, one calling for a ceasefire, the other one calling for a release of those hostages. So if that were to be the case in the next few moments, you would see a very significant shift from the UN Security Council when it comes to this war in Gaza.
And could that lead to a permanent, sustainable ceasefire? Can we expect that?
Well, the question is more about how that will impact the negotiations, particularly as we know that that Israeli delegation may not travel to the United States. However, we understand that some progress has been made on the 6-week ceasefire negotiations. The Israelis have accepted a US proposal of exchanging around 40 Israeli hostages, women, the injured and the elderly, men over 50, against around 700 Palestinian prisoners. That's what we understand from Israeli media. 100 of those Palestinian prisoners also serving life sentences for murdering Israelis. Another concession by Israel would be to allow women and children, around 2,000 to 3,000 a day, to return to northern Gaza once those hostages start being released. So certainly concessions from the Israelis. The question now is whether or not Hamas will accept, and that will take a few days because the message has to get to Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who is hiding deep beneath the ground in Gaza. So we'll have to wait a couple of days to see if the ceasefire talks make progress, but certainly just a few minutes until we hear from the UN Security Council.
Alex Cadia in Tel Aviv, thank you for those updates. Now, a hearing is about to begin shortly in New York City to determine whether I beg your pardon, when one of former US President Donald Trump's criminal cases will go to trial. The trial in Donald Trump's hush money case was expected to be getting underway this week, but a judge decided to delay proceedings. Separately, the former president also faces a deadline to pay millions of dollars after a separate Manhattan judge found him liable for fraud. Crowds of supporters took to the streets in Senegal as they celebrated presidential candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye's probable win. Opposition parties declared Faye an early winner following a peaceful day of voting on Sunday to elect Senegal's fifth president. This was after 3 years of unprecedented political turmoil that sparked violent anti-government protests there. In a major crackdown on big tech firms, the European Union has initiated investigations into Apple, Meta and Google owner Alphabet for potential violations of the European Union's Digital Markets Act that could lead to fines of up to 10% of their global annual turnover for alleged breach, including disparaging rival products on their platforms.
There are in total 5 of them. These decisions to open non-compliance investigation, they come only 2 weeks after the implementation deadline has passed and show that the DMA compliance is something that we take really seriously. Our 5 investigations, they concern Alphabet, Apple and Meta.
Lead India's Ishan Garg sent us this report from Brussels.
Well, the Digital Markets Act under the European Commission is one of the flagship flagship legislations by the European Union, essentially looking at how they can level the playing field and how they can regulate competition, especially in the field of technology. So this is an act that is going to regulate how various large tech companies, which includes Alphabet, Meta, so Microsoft and Amazon, how they are going to they're going to be playing in the European market. And one of the biggest concerns for the European regulators is, of course, how best can they protect the consumers, and that's one of the biggest points that they have brought forward in the press conferences that have been happening today. They're saying that they're going to be investigating these companies, Apple, Alphabet and Meta, with a view to ensure that consumers are protected and also that smaller businesses which are operating not only in the European Union but also potentially being impacted worldwide, they can be protected from the larger companies who are being investigated for acts that can be taken, that can be considered potentially as being anti-competitive in nature.
You're watching DD India Global, still to come on this show. In the latest blow to their green agenda, EU countries split over nature policy as Hungary withdraws its support for the nature bill. Also on the other side, we bring you Holi festivities across India and the world.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. The European Union's primary initiative aimed at rejuvenating degraded ecosystems faces uncertainty as a scheduled vote to enact the legislation on Monday was scrapped following Hungary's withdrawal of support. This nature conservation law represents the most recent EU environmental policy in countering opposition as policymakers navigate stringent green regulations within the EU. More from Europe. Britain is set to give details of cybersecurity threat and hacking of the country's electoral commission, which is allegedly linked to China. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden is due to address the Parliament on Monday. UK says Chinese spies are targeting British officials in sensitive positions in politics, defence and business. This is a part of China's spying operation to get access to secrets. The attack on the Electoral Commission took place in August 2021 but was disclosed last year.
Well, we've been very clear that the situation now is that China is behaving in an increasingly assertive way abroad, authoritarian at home, and it represents an epoch-defining challenge and also the greatest state-based threat to our economic security. So it's right that we take measures to protect ourselves, which is what we are doing.
On to Asia now. The rift between the Philippines and China over South China Sea has deepened. The Philippines summoned China's envoy on Monday to protest against aggressive actions in the South China Sea. The Foreign Ministry of the Philippines accused China's Coast Guard of using water cannon against a civilian boat supplying troops at the Second Thomas Shoal on Saturday. However, Chinese Foreign Ministry said that the Philippines has to remove grounded warship in the South China Sea. Earlier on Monday, Manila's defense minister dared Beijing to bolster its vast sovereignty claims by taking them to the international arbitration. China claims almost the entire South China Sea as its own, including the Second Thomas Shoal, which is within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. In 1999, the Philippines intentionally grounded an old warship at the shoal as a means of bolstering its territorial claims. And next we take a look at what else is happening across the world. Thailand has commenced delivering humanitarian aid to military-ruled Myanmar, underlining its commitment to fostering dialogue between opposing factions. This effort forms a crucial component of Thailand's broader peace initiative aimed at creating a humanitarian corridor, particularly crucial as Myanmar contends with a deepening civil conflict. Migrants continue to arrive at a border along the Rio Grande near El Paso in Texas, seeking entry into the United States. Immigration authorities have raised concerns for what they worry may be a spring surge of arrivals. Last week, the Texas law known as SB 4, which makes it a state crime to illegally enter from a foreign country, was blocked by a federal appeals court. Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun is set to resign by the end of the year as part of a significant restructuring in response to the aircraft manufacturer's extensive safety challenges, compounded by a mid-air panel blowout on a 737 MAX aircraft in January. Since the incident, Boeing shares have depreciated by approximately 25%. On to India, where millions of citizens are celebrating Holi, known as the Festival of Colours. The festival was celebrated at home and abroad today. Holi celebrates the beginning of spring season and also the victory of good over evil. The festival, characterized by its vibrant colours, gulal and customs, transcends mere festivity. It is a jubilant celebration of happiness. Holi is celebrated with diverse customs throughout India. In Barsana, Latmar Holi involves women playfully hitting men with sticks, while Phulovali Holi in Vrindavan sees devotees showering each other with flower petals. The festival of Holi is also making its mark globally. This vibrant festival, signifying the triumph of good over evil and the arrival of spring, is captivating hearts worldwide, from the United States to the United Kingdom, from Australia to Africa. Holi is being embraced with open arms. It's not just about splashing colours, it's a celebration of unity, love, and the joy of life.
It's not just Indians at home in a festive mood. Millions of expats abroad are celebrating Holi with aplomb. Millions are gathering in parts of the world to put on their best ethnic attire, taste some home-cooked Indian food, and of course play with colours. People in Brussels celebrated Holi with great pomp and show.
We have food here every Sunday, and on Holi we have some special delicacies. So as you can see, please are absolutely loving all of it.
In East Africa, the Indian community living in Uganda gathered for the Festival of Colour. Locals not only got drenched in colours, but also enjoyed Bollywood music.
It brings quite a bit of positivity in you. You know, any negativity which is within you, you just set it off. You know that, okay, now I'm going to start it's going to be a new start for me.
People in Nepal drenched in colourful celebrations as they marked the Hindu festival of colours, Holi, in the capital city, Kathmandu. Dancing to the tunes of drums and cymbals, the locals threw colours at each other, engaging in fun, frolic celebrations.
Holi is a festival of colors. We smear each other, our friends and families. People away from home also return for celebration. Today we are gathered here at Basantpur to celebrate the festival likewise. The celebration will take place in other places as well.
The Indian Embassy in the United States also celebrated Holi with great fervour, where several members of the Indian diaspora participated. Meanwhile, a small nation in West Africa, Cabo Verde, also held a colourful celebration of Holi.
That's all for this edition of DD India Global. We apologize for not being able to connect with Kate Fisher from Washington. Meanwhile, you can give us your feedback on social media platforms at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. For now, happy Holi to everyone from all of us here in New Delhi. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.